On the 12th day of Christmas, my Bridget brought to me an epiphany. We made it! We made it! Day 12! The time of the Epiphany, where basically everything gets celebrated all at once, from the visit of the Magi to the baptism in the River Jordan to the wedding at Cana. It's all right here, all together, because this is the time where we celebrate the revelation that God walks among men and men walk amongst God, and God's the one in whom we live, move, and have our being. It is a very powerful day. So let's talk about all that as we walk together down creation paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christo-pagan druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a drummer drumming.
Today, we're going to be talking about the Epiphany, or as it gets turned into today, spiritual awakening. And why I don't like that term. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on the app that you're listening to us on. We do 5 original episodes Monday through Friday. We got a lot of stuff planned out and you don't want to miss a thing. It's really cool. So let's get into it. Spiritual awakenings are boring as passe. There, said it. Said it. I'm done. Episode over. Bye.
Mic drop.
No, okay. I guess I should explain what I mean by that. I don't like the term spiritual awakening because it's generally, not always, but generally used as a one and done shorthand for not having to actually do any of the actual work that spirituality demands of a person. It has, starting with the New Thought movement in the 20s and really coming into its own in the New Age movement of the 60s, 70s, all the way up to today, become the shorthand for, aha, I have seen the truth. I have seen the world as it is. I am on the cusp of enlightenment. I did the thing. Solved it.
I wanted to make a joke about how this isn't like Pokemon. You're not trying to just collect it and be done with. But then I realized even in Pokemon, they collect them and then they take them to the battle arena. So even in there, they're still doing work. They're still doing other stuff with it.
You got to train it. You got to
train it.
Yeah. And this is the problem that we're having with spirituality is when we talk about spiritual awakening, you did it. You're done. And I would like to point out that the Buddha continued to meditate after his enlightenment. Shocking, I know. But the way that we have commoditized spirituality in our modern world, we are either hoping for that moment where we just, oh, I get it. All of my pain, misery, strife is just gone. And again, I don't know if we've been going back to the Buddha a lot lately, but if we're going to have any figure who is the linchpin of what enlightenment kind of looks like, the Buddha cried when friends of his died. Enlightenment is not being free of emotion. Enlightenment is being free of suffering. Suffering is defined in Buddhism as attachment to or aversion from suffering. So it's just allowing it to wash over you. That is achievable in life. In one lifetime, you can free yourself of that attachment to or aversion from almost anything.
And even in the Buddha's story, he has multiple epiphanies. There isn't just one. He has the first one when he realizes there's suffering in the world. Yeah. And he goes, I'm leaving home. I'm going out. And he goes out on his journey. And then he has another one when he's like, oh, maybe this isn't right. And tries another extreme version following other various spiritual seekers. And each time having an epiphany and then trying something different until he has an epiphany where he's just like, oh, the middle way. It's not supposed to be either extremes. And he goes and meditates. Because it still isn't the epiphany as like it's generally sold as one and done. That was still another start of another part of that journey.
Remember, the point of meditation is to learn how to have equanimity, where you can not react to any of the things that happen to you. It's learning to give yourself that space between action and reaction, which is why it is something that is still practiced daily, even by a person who is definitionally enlightened like the Buddha. And this is something that we see even in Christianity. Like I said, the Epiphany technically celebrates 4 different dates. This holiday celebrates the appearance of the angels to the shepherds, which precedes the Magi. The Magi show up within 2 years of Jesus's birth. The shepherds show up earlier in the story. So you have the revelation to the shepherds, the revelation to the Magi. The order of these I don't think is as set, but the marriage at Cana and the baptism in the River Jordan, each of these is an aspect of the Epiphany. And even after that, you have Jesus asking his own disciples over and over and over again, who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? And that revelation still unfolding and being brought out. It is not this one and done commoditized thing. I also don't like the idea of awakening for another reason. I think it can lead us to thinking poorly of those who are not on the same path that we are on. We are awake, they are asleep. It gives us a way to look down on and denigrate those who are not practicing our path, even if they are practicing a different path. They may still be doing something that is in concert with what we're doing.
Or as I like to go, well, if we're going to play within this mythic structure, okay, so you got up out of bed on the right-hand side, and you walked into the kitchen, you had coffee, then you brushed your teeth, then you showered, then you worked out. And you're mad at the other person that got up on the left-hand side of the bed, went and showered, brushed their teeth, had coffee, and worked out. Because let's be honest, that's what it is. They both woke up, they're awake, but they did it in a different way.
See, the difference between the way of Jesus and the imperial church, the imperial church says, if you're not for us, you're against us. Jesus said, if you're not against us, you're for us.
Yeah.
Like literally in the Gospels.
Yes.
So it says, if you are not against us, you are for us. Because we're all working towards a similar goal of finding a life of meaning, of sustainability, of taking care of one another and getting to that promised land where we're all living in the land of milk and honey and able to support a good life for all. And so if you're not opposing that journey to a good life, you're on our side. And that's a very different perspective to be coming from. But when we're looking for an epiphany, I think we think that it has a staying power that they really don't. In my own life, I have had several experiences that I would call an epiphany. Like the scales fell from my eyes. I had that spiritual awakening moment of, oh my, like just dumbfounded at the profundity of the experience. Like, yes, it did change me. Yes, it did change me forever, but not in a way that people think grand experiences like that change you. It changed the way I think about things because there are things that I cannot deny because I have seen and experienced them in my own life, right? That's what the epiphany did for me. But, there are days when it's easier to just pretend that didn't happen and go about my life in some form of denial or to just get so distracted by the milieu of daily life to kind of forget those profound experiences of interconnection or what have you.
Or once again, as I like to dive deeper into the imagery of awake, well, as a human being, I might wake up. Great, I'm awake. But you know what? I'm going to go back to sleep. Insanity will set in if I stay awake for too long. I can't stay in that state. So if we're playing in this mythic image, I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to wake up again. I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to wake up again. Therefore, that means every day I've got to work on it.
Every day. Every day we strive to perfect that which God has already made perfect. And that is the work set before us. And it really is the great challenge when we are working on having I don't even want to say a spiritual life, because as an animist, I don't see a difference between spirituality and living.
Yeah.
Because everything has spirit and everything should be treated with a certain amount of reverence and respect because it has spirit. Like the difference between me making a tea and making a potion. I know I use the Pam meme as a statement a lot, but it's helpful because it really is the same picture. Yes, one may have more intentionality to it in picking out the ingredients and doing everything to prep for it. But a potion is a potion is a potion is a potion, right? Whether that's just I'm making my tea, I'm making a morning cup of coffee, what have you. Because of living in this kind of animistic state, it does add a certain, I hate using all the big words, but it adds a certain mundanity, like to spirituality, that everything has spirit. So it's just the way things are. And as a result of the imperial church that wanted to lock the sacred behind giant stone walls and big wooden or metal doors that you had to get access through the holy hands of the people that they had put in power and authority over you to dole it out in accordance to their own will. We have this, I think, desire still in us for it to have some kind of specialness that in some ways actually takes away from the preciousness that is actually there.
Yeah, seeing it in the ordinary is a big challenge. It started with an epiphany that I turned into a fun exercise that I like to do to help me remember the sacred in the ordinary. It starts with the title that God gave Moses, I am that I am. So in our daily lives, we run into these situations that are out of our control. Happens often. Being able to accept that it is what it is an act of divinity. Acceptance is an act of divinity. You are literally enacting the name of God in that moment. And it could be as simply as someone cuts you off in traffic and just accepting it.
It's the real work of the second path.
It really is.
You know, like I say so often, and it's one of the reasons I harp on path 2, the via negativa, so much. Because, yes, this is grief and pain and all that, but it's letting go and spaciousness. It's letting go. Say it again. Letting go. Because that's the part we don't want to do. It's easy to talk about how grief is letting go because something has either been taken away from us or has been lost or a tragedy has befallen and have to find some way to pick yourself up and move forward and let go of what we no longer have or who we no longer have or what. But letting go is a constant spiritual practice. And it's something that we see even with the baptism story, right? Jesus shows up. John knows who he is and says, no, you should be baptizing me. And Jesus says, just do it this way. This is the way it needs to be done.
Yeah.
And John's like, but I'm not even worthy to tighten the buckles on your shoes. And Jesus is like, it's all good. You gotta let it go. We're not putting people up on thrones. We're not putting people up on pedestals. We're not here to elevate or feed into the ego of other people. It's about letting it go. And that is so much of the practice. Because when you let it go, when you learn how to do the via negativa of just letting it go, you can do the via transformativa of bringing change.
Yeah.
If you're all bound up in the emotion of the injustice, because it's so easy to get bound up in the emotion of the injustice, that you're either going to make a ignorant, unhelpful decision and do something that may set the entire cause back. Not that I'm thinking of anything in particular, but I'm kind of thinking of some things in particular. Or you're going to be trapped in this, well, what can I do? I'm only one person. Well, yes, we're only one person. Collectively, we can do things together. Can we actually solve all the problems in the world? No. The world is a mess. The world has always been a mess. The world will always be a mess. All we can do is try to tidy up the little area around us and hope more people will tidy up the little areas around them so that we can collectively tidy up the world. That's what we can actually do. One, letting go of this idea that I have to save the world. To me, this is the power of having the Jesus narrative in my life. Jesus saved the world so I can take care of my stuff. I don't have to save the world. That's what Jesus did. Jesus saved the world. I need to, as Paul said, work out my own salvation with fear and trembling and take care of what is around me. That's what I need to be doing. And yeah, there are times where you get that sense of, but oh man, I need to save the world. You see this with climate change, with what's going on in various war zones around the world, with various other tragedies that are happening around the world. You have this like, oh, I just want to get in there and make it right.
Because that's the thing, is that the desire to make better is born in all of us. We all have that. And that's a good thing, but it's remembering it is that it is. That is a start. And if you let it just drive you into heedlessness, then folly is your finish.
Yeah.
I was reminded there was a conversation on a thread that I was reading a couple days ago. A person was exacerbated with the state of things, and they decided evil was the problem for the things in the Middle East, the things over in Russia, all these different places around the world. Evil was the bad thing. And the rest of the thread, they started with this desire to make better. because yes, there are problems in the world. It's good to want to make it better, but they ran into heedlessness as more people chimed into this conversation. They were basically turning themselves into a crusade because the person started out anti-war, anti-fighting, and as the conversation went on, they were ready to go to war against evil. That's still fighting. If they could have just stopped for that moment, recognize the sacred in it, give themselves that moment to breathe, ponder in their heart.
It's the great benefit that I've found in getting my ethics through my practice of ceremonial magic, where both sides are evil. There's bad in both sides, might be the better way to put it. On the side of good, there is an overemphasis on conformity and smushing out the differences and making everyone conform. And conformity is a vice. It is vile. It is evil. We should not be pushing for conformity. We have to watch out for that anytime we're trying to do something good. Evil arises from acting out of your own flow. No. From over-enforcement of the law. See, evil in the context of ceremonial magic actually comes from the desire to do justice. It is nobody is the villain in their own story. And it is that desire to impose justice. My understanding of justice, that's where that solipsism, that individuation, that individuality that is often associated with the side of evil comes in. Oh, I have understood the law. I will enforce the law. That judgment side comes down, and that is the root of all evil. My desires, my will, I know what is right, and I'm going to enforce what is right. The middle way, how do these two get reconciled? They get reconciled in one of the hardest concepts to meditate on ever, and that's beauty. The answer has to be beautiful. How is it beautiful? Well, it needs to be symmetrical, so it's not too much for the individual or too much for the collective. It has to be beautiful in that it is making things prosper and grow, not just tearing things down and destroying things. That it is seeding the new, even when it has to burn down or reuse materials that are already there. It's making something new. It is making something beautiful. So if in the end you're just creating bland conformity mills on the one side or authoritarian torture chambers on the other, evil, both sides, both of those, evil, bad. You did the bad thing. You've not created beauty. You've not created anything of value from it. And that is a hard ethic to go through. And when we're looking at these epiphany stories, the one thing that is common to all of them is learning to let go.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, the hardest part of that is that learning to let go in the moment. Going back to that example of that conversation, watching it, I had the strong desire to make better. I wanted to step in. I wanted to help people see that their drive was good, but where they were headed was bad. They were heading into folly. That fire had raged too hot at that point in time. There was no way to put it out in a way that would be constructive and beneficial. The only way to possibly put that out, it would have required a martyr. Going off this story, I would have had to have stepped in to be that light so that they could attack me to burn out their fire, and realize that then with guilt and other things, they would have then been like, oh, yeah, I see what they're saying now, hopefully. But I had to realize that no, that was not the time and place.
The shepherds had to let go of their fear.
I had to let go.
The first thing the angels say to the shepherds, be not afraid.
Be not afraid.
The shepherds had to let go of their fear. The wise men had to let go of the comfort of their homes. And like we were talking about yesterday, travel through the desert to a foreign land where people did not speak their language to find what they were looking for. That they then gave up parts of their fortune when they got there. At the wedding at Cana, Mary is like, so Jesus, make the water wine. We're out of wine. We need wine. You can do it. Just make the water wine. He's like, my time's not come. And Mary just lets it go. Mary doesn't sit there and harp on him, but you can do it. You have to do it. She doesn't whine. There's no guilt. She just turns to the other people there and says, look, whatever he says, just do it, and leaves. And Jesus turns the water into wine. So you can see that letting go. She had to let go of her expectations. He had to let go of his expectations too.
Yeah.
And again, like we've already talked about at the baptism, John is like, no. You got this backwards. I'm the one who needs baptism from you. No, let it go. This is the way it needs to be. This is the way we need to do this. In all of these stories, we have people having to get over and through that ego of, no, I know what's best. I know, I know, I am, to get to that other side of where they needed to be. And that's hard. Anybody who tells you that they're perfect at that, probably lying. That's what I don't like about the idea of this binary way of thinking that you're either awake or you're asleep. Well, sometimes you're groggy. Sometimes you're awake and on autopilot. Right?
Yeah, in our sleep-deprived world nowadays, most of us are groggy.
Even in that analogy of spiritual awakening, there's a gradient there of sometimes you're just in a hypnagogic state and you're not really getting a sense of what's actually going on around you. You're technically awake.
Sometimes we're so over-caffeinated, everyone's just like, whoa, dude, calm down.
Yeah, sometimes you're too awake.
Too awake. Too intense.
And so even there should be a spectrum. Because I've met a lot of people that are spiritually awake, but kind of sleepwalking. They know the right words. They know the right things. They can repeat and parrot them back. But that's as far as their practice goes. They're not doing the meditation. They're not doing the actual work on themselves. And that's very important. Like, Jesus is very clear. We work on ourselves first. Don't try to take the mote out of your brother's eye before you take the beam out of your own.
Yeah.
Right? You work on yourself first. You don't go out and try to change the world before you've done any of that work on yourself. And some people hear that and they're like, but you don't understand. I'm a mess. If I work on me first, I won't have any time left to help anybody out. And to me, that's missing the point. The point is, we can't change their hearts. Fill in the name authoritarian dictator that you want to be doing something different in the circumstances that they're doing things in. There are 3 ways to get rid of this person. One is for them to do the work and go, oh, are we the baddies? Yeah, highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. To overthrow them through peaceful means or to overthrow them through not so peaceful means. Those are your options. All of that requires you to do work on yourself. Because between here and there, if you are not making sure that you are not complying preemptively, that you're not just acquiescing to their whims without them even having to tell you what they are, if you're not figuring out how to do the more subversive things, right? That's so much of the stuff between here and there, our work on ourselves. Because if you can't keep a secret to save your life, you won't be able to organize the Velvet Revolution that you see against Ceausescu, right? You're not going to be able to organize something like that. If you're not working on yourself to have patience and fortitude, right? You're not going to be able to build the solidarity movement that we saw in Poland that just struggled its way through.
This is also, when it comes to resistance, one of the most powerful tools we learn from children. That is asking that childlike question when somebody's trying to tell you to do something, you know is wrong. And you're just like, but why? What is the point to this? In the right context, in the right framing, that it gets the person perpetrating evil, perpetrating wrong, to at least question. They have to answer at least. They might give you platitudes or something, but it gets them thinking.
Because I know we're living in a world where everything feels immediate. And that's a result of the media, the social media, the podcasts, the streamers that people are watching, the news that people are consuming, really make everything feel now. Like we have to do something now. And I'm not saying that we need to slow boil or anything like that. This is not an argument for incrementalism or anything like that. But we need to have plans.
Yeah.
And we need to have the strength and fortitude and discipline to enact those plans.
It's back to that both and thinking. I've spilt the milk. Well, I both need to clean up the spilt milk in the moment and reflect and ponder upon what circumstances led to that milk being spilled, and could something be done? Could a plan be enacted to not spill milk again in the future?
And this is the problem. Like in our country, we have this issue of every 4 years, we realize, oh, maybe politics matters. And then we don't get what we want. And we're like, but I tried that one time every 4 years.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, you got spilt milk. You're going to clean up the milk. Now it's the time to clean up the milk.
You waited till the milk became cheese. It was easy to try to scrape up. Like
there was 3 years. There's now 3 years to ponder and contemplate how not to spill the milk when the fourth year comes up again.
And oh man, we just really aren't putting the work in. That's why epiphanies are great. Epiphanies are wonderful. Spiritual awakenings are great. They're wonderful. I don't want anyone to feel shame or anything if you've had any of these experiences. Like I said, I've had these experiences, but I think we have built into this spiritualizing of spirituality, this idea of if you haven't had the heavens open to you and you've had some grand experience of the beyond, if you've not literally had an apocalypse, I really need to get that through your head. If you've not lived through an apocalypse, you're not a spiritual person, because that's what apocalypse means. It is an unveiling. It is when everything gets broken away and you see what's really going on and you have that spiritual awakening. And you know what? Throughout the Middle Ages, and while I think they exaggerate quite a bit, there was this warning that you find both in Jewish texts and in Christian texts of don't ask for spiritual awakening. Don't ask to see the world as it really is, because if you did, you wouldn't be able to breathe, because it's demons all the way down. Everywhere you look, it's just demons. It's like living in a soup that is nothing but demons. You don't want to see it. You don't want to just do your thing. We'll get through it. Just keep your head down. Keep pushing forward. You don't want to see it. Again, I think that it's overstating the case. I don't believe that we're literally in like a soup of demons. I think there is something to that when you have a spiritual awakening, it is always a personal apocalypse. It shakes you up. Sometimes it shakes up more than your life, because a lot of people's spiritual awakenings happen when they have a cancer diagnosis, or a loved one dies, or they're in a car accident, or there's an earthquake or a storm or something. So usually they occur around really big things. Baha'u'llah famously had his spiritual awakening when he was imprisoned by the Shah and put into the black pit where they put people to forget them, where the literal way they kept people in check was not to shackle them, but they literally had a chain that was so heavy people couldn't pick it up, and they just laid it across their legs. He had to get into that pit before he had a spiritual awakening. And I bring him up not because like Baha'u'llah is one of my favorite mystics or anything, but because I think that's indicative of how most of us have to get to that point. He was already a Bab. He was already practicing the faith that he would go on to promulgate later, right? He'd already done all of that. But his spiritual awakening, he had to literally get to the blackest of black points in his personal narrative to get there. And that's usually where spiritual awakenings happen. Very few people decide, I'm just going to be sitting around one day. Oh, look, the heavens have opened. I have been awakened without an apocalypse, right? Even the Buddha, to go back to the Buddha story. The Buddha story happened, his apocalypse was the four sights. He saw an old person because his father had kept him away from sea. So he saw no old people. What's that? Wait, old age is a thing? What is old age? Everybody gets old? Wait, that's going to happen to me? Right? He sees pain, he sees sickness, he sees old age, and he sees death. And he's horrified. Wait, people die? I'm going to find a way to stop this. He had to go through an apocalypse before he went out, right? This is how most of these stories start. From the more legendary to the more like contemporary, like we have documentation of stories. There's an apocalypse at the beginning of them where a personal tragedy or some other kind of tragedy hit them. I'm not saying you can't have a spiritual awakening without a tragedy, but statistically speaking, it takes one to have the other. So maybe we should focus less on trying to have the grand apocalyptic vision, virtual awakening where we see and behold everything, and just try to be more about getting the work done of being compassionate, bringing justice. Like if we all just spent some of our time on justice making, just some, the world would be a better place. I know I started with this grand statement of spiritual awakening is overrated, but it is. It just is. It's not going to be that life changer that people think it is. Because the Buddha's spiritual awakening was not his enlightenment. It was realizing, oh no, people get sick, they get old, and they die.
Yeah.
Oh my. Oh my.
So I got a fun challenge for everyone. When you're out and about your day, especially in the States, the next time you're around in public and somebody complains eggs are too expensive, for instance, do your justice making and just as innocently as you can muster, look at them and go, but why? Just like a 3-year-old would do. But why are they so expensive? Maybe that'll be their epiphany. That maybe that question will just stick in their brain and they'll stop and actually think about all the different causes that go into that. Because that is actually a ridiculously complex answer and question that most people try to simplify in a falsehood and are using it for political gain.
I mean, there is one way to simplify it down, and it's corporate greed.
Yeah.
But
But those people are like capitalism, hoorah, and aren't going to want to hear that because the minute they hear the other, they have a thing to fight against.
factory farming may have been a mistake.
Yeah. Or part of it may have been good and part of it not good, or there's a lot of complex things. But if you just go, but why?
Well, why?
And then just wait. Honestly, just ask this question and wait for whatever answer they're going to muster. And remember to let go. Don't have attachment to their answer. Just let it be. Just leave silence. Part of that via negativa. Leave silence. Leave space for them to actually honestly and sincerely contemplate the question. Justice making.
Justice making. Make mischief. Mischief is good for the soul. So I would love to know if you've had an epiphany or a spiritual awakening that you want to share. That's great. But I think much better is how can we be doing better at mischief making and actually justice making and spreading compassion. I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments. If you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, they won't let us know that you did. So you can leave a comment there because engagement is magic. Then head over to creationsfast.com and you can leave a comment there. And they will see it and be able to respond to you. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars you can pass our way, think about joining the membership. We offer monthly and annual memberships there. Or you can also support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. I am C. Dorset on both. As we're heading out, St. John the Baptist, who came to us in the spirit of Elijah, who showed us what a spiritual awakening does to someone where they move out into the wilderness and subsist on locusts and preach the word. Help us to find our way, to have the humility to know when we need to put our own will aside for the betterment of all, and when we need to speak truth to power and accept the consequences that might come. Amen.
Amen. 5 golden rings.